I think the bridge that you were alluding to was the extent of the slide that you can do between notes. So the bridge is when you get to the fifth note, ba, and so this would be sa, re, ga, ma, or G, A, B, C, D, and to slide between any of the notes below the D up to any of the notes above the D, that's where there's a limitation in terms of doing a slide. So I can do any slide between the low D up to the high C. So if I just demonstrate. But if I want to go up to the D above, then there'll be a slight break in the slide. So. Using the key coming down, you can do a fairly smooth slide, but there'll tend to be a slight break. So that's where the issue of the bridge comes in. But you can play all 12 notes without any problem. And the way you do it is just by half covering the holes. It could be slightly more, slightly less than half. But in order to get the tuning of each flat or sharp note correct, it's by pitching as you play, and that gives you, that's automatically you adjust slightly to make sure that it stays in tune.
Would you mind just demonstrating playing a kind of Western chromatic scale with the kind of half note coverings? Amazing. So it's more difficult than perhaps just a Western flautist having to just press a key, as it were.
Yes, it takes a lot of time, especially that the amount that you half cover or uncover a particular hole is different on each flute. So you really have to be listening to the drone or to the other instruments the whole time to make sure that your tuning stays in place for each and every note.
And of course, having open holes allows you to make those slides, which are such a key part of Indian music as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a big limitation on the Western flute, is that you can slide, maybe up to a tone just by bending inwards or outwards, but you can't get a smooth slide covering almost the entirety of an octave on the Western flute.
So slides are such a kind of key part of the characteristics of Indian music that perhaps you don't get so much of in the Western classical sphere. Are there any types of particular slides that composers should be aware of if they're wanting to use the Bansuri in their work?
Well, you would often approach a long note with a slide up to it. You could also have, like they had in Baroque music in the West, turns at the beginning of the note. So you might start, if you have a long note, you might go where you're sliding down to a note below or two notes below, and then you come back up to it. Or you might start a note with a turn. And then slide down to, end the notes by sliding down to a note below. Quite often when you going up a scale, you would take each note from the note above. So instead of playing in Indian music, you never really play just straight notes. So you're always constantly embellishing each note, either from a note above, sliding up to it, cutting it, and I'll just demonstrate various different techniques. So if I was going up a scale, I'd never play. I go. And same thing coming down, you kind of go up to the note above and then slide down to the note below. So I'll do that a bit slower. So the idea would be. So going up. Like that. The other common phrasing which we did earlier is doing a turn on each note. And another one is which is, you hear it a lot, is where you kind of cut each note with a note below. So. Which is another very common type of phrasing.
So we've got those four types, so thank you so much for explaining those to us. And I think it's funny, just as you were talking about those, each of them rung a chord in my mind about a type of ornament in Baroque music. And it kind of follows on as to how we might notate the Bansuri in Western notation. So Western composers can use this instrument in their work. So just those four, the cut to start with reminded me of a mordant, which is just a squiggle on top of a note, used very commonly in the French Baroque. We then had the slide, not so much of a Baroque ornament, but very common notation of just a kind of line in between notes. We then had the turn, which is again a very common Baroque element, Baroque ornament with a kind of slight turn-like symbol. And then we had the jumping notes, which in Western music there's something called échappés ornamentations, which translates to like an escape note. So da 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 da. It's the kind of the note at the top has kind of been escaped, which you could notate perhaps as a crush note, a grace note. There as well. So I think all of those are actually possible to notate.